Hello, and welcome to a lesson on Hyper-V and Silver Core. Hyper-V, which is really the virtualization of what Microsoft offers. We've been doing this with Oracle VirtualBox. There's VMware, um, but this Hyper-V comes with almost every operating system, including the home operating system and the servers as well, except the ones the uh, the home editions. We don't get Hyper-V. You can, by the way, if you remember from lesson one when we talked about the different types of 2012 servers that Microsoft's offer, they offer the standard edition, the data center edition, and they offer a Hyper-V. You can actually go and download Hyper-V evaluation from Microsoft as well. Hardly anyone does it because you can actually you already have it as part of the standard and the data edition. Anyway, so Hyper-V is virtualization, is really creating it's an application that you create a virtual machine on your host computer, and in that virtual machine you can place anything you want, and there's major advantages to doing that, and we'll talk about that right now. There is a software called the hypervisor, which runs on the host machine, and it's a computer that has the software, the firmware, all the hardware that runs and create the virtual um, machine. So Microsoft has that. The virtualization server is the actual computer, the host, I'll call it from now on, that has all the resources that are needed. The Hyper-V Manager is the one that allows you to create, configure, and manage the virtual machine, and that's what we're going into. This is like the virtual box that we've been using. Um, it is best, excuse me, you can run multiple virtual machine domain controllers on a physical server and access them remotely. And that's typically what is recommended most of the time. Um, you can install, now, here's the thing. If we try to install Hyper-V inside the virtual box, we are going to have a problem. So let me show you, and we're going to get around that using some commands in PowerShell. Let me go into, just follow what I'm doing now. Let's go into the server because the hypervisor has already been running. And if I go to, if you go to roles, add roles and features, okay, let it boot up, hasn't finished booting up. Okay, so once we go add roles and features, you click on next and you click next. And right here, see, mine is grayed out. I have already installed it, but I didn't install it here. If you click this and you go next and you try to go next again, you're going to get this message that says Hyper-V cannot be installed. The hypervisor has already been running because you're running, you can't install Hyper-V inside a virtual box. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to PowerShell and we're going to type in some commands that allow us to run um, Hyper-V inside the virtual box. And but remember, this is an environment that's not supported by Microsoft. Only use it for self-study in the lab. Okay. So when I want to, here are the commands that you type. There's spaces in here. Okay. I went through these commands. So in here, while you're doing these commands, excuse me, while you're doing these commands, they're going to ask you to restart the computer. Don't do that. Just wait till you finish all these four commands, and at the end you'll type in restart, and you'll have enabled Hyper-V on a 2012 server that is running inside a virtual box. So I'll get started with you, but then you'll continue with this. I don't want to redo this again because I already have it. So what I want you to do is go back to the server and right click on the um, the PowerShell ISC. You want to get that, open that up. Okay. There you go. Now it has opened. And I'm just going to bring this down a little bit so you'll see what I'm talking about. You don't even have to remember some of these commands. And what you're going to do is you're going to type, oops, enable. Okay, let me put these on the sides. Type enable dash, and you get a choice, and you want to choose window optional features. So you go to, excuse me, well, it's not showing up, so type WIN, and there you go, optional features. Well, you got to hit the tab key, and it takes it, put space, and put dash online, hit space, and I'm sorry, the tab key, then space, dash feature name, hit the tab key to complete the command, and then you just keep typing, right? Just going back. So you type in Microsoft Hyper-V space dash all space no start. Hit enter. Ignore whatever it says. Then just type in this command. There's a space in here. There's a space in here. There's a space in on the third command here and there, and just type restart computer. Let the computer restart, and once it restarts, you'll have Hyper-V installed. Okay, let me close this. I really don't need this now because I already have it installed. All right, so this is really the power of also PowerShell. It allows us to do scripting like that. You won't be able to do that within the VirtualBox. In real life, you probably want to add it as a role. That's probably the best thing to do. Okay, so let me go to Hyper-V Manager. So what you need to do is go to Start, or you can actually do it from Manage, from Tools, I mean, right? So here's our Hyper-V Manager. This is the Hyper-V settings we'll talk about in a minute. This is like the VirtualBox when you open it up. You can right-click on the server itself and say New Virtual Machine you want to create. All right. It says click blah, blah, blah. When you want to do it, you want to create this wizard's going to help you create a whole virtual machine. So just click on next. Okay, so what do you want to name it? Let's call it test VM. Click on next. Oh, by the way, let me just go back. Say this is where do you want to store this virtual machine? It's stored right here in Microsoft Windows dash. This is on the physical drive dash Hyper-V. So you can store it somewhere else if you want to, but I'll leave it in the same place. It's okay. So click on next. Now you want generation 1 or generation 2 virtual machine. So you want, if you choose generation 1, that means the virtual machine provides the same virtual hardware to the virtual machine as the previous sessions, which is versions. We'll take that. All right, now you get to choose how much memory. See, it says startup memory. The good thing about if you click on dynamic memory, and let's say I want to start with 2 gig. This is just, okay, let's start with 5, leave it as 512, it's out of amount. It will start out of 512 megs, and if you need more, it'll just take more. Instead of reserving 2 gigs of memory so that your other devices can't use, this is more dynamic, which is really nice. Okay, so click on next. Now, we don't have any connection to the internet. We'll do that later on. Okay, so we'll talk about how we set up the virtual machine connection to the outside world, if you want to connect, or to internally communicate with other virtual machines, and also communicate, or you can set it up so it can communicate with the host and other virtual machine. So leave it not, we'll do that later. Click on next. Now, you wanted to create a virtual box, VHDX, yes I want, and the size is going to be 127 gigabyte. So that's the maximum you can do, 64 terabytes. You can use an existing hard drive if you want, if that you already have, or you can attach a virtual hard drive later. We want to create one. So we're just clicking next. Oops, yes, that's it. You can install the operating system now if you want to on an and typically what I like to do is also, or you can do it during the creating a VM. I've been hearing with Hyper-V, there's a lot of problems with that if you try to install an operating system while you're creating um, a VM, a virtual machine. But you could click right here and go to your D drives. You see the physical D drive, or if you have an ISO message, ISO file, you can pick that up as well. But we'll leave it as installing an operating system later. Click on next. And this is the snapshot that I want you to take. So do control print screen. Here's your first print screen that shows that you have completed a new virtual machine, created a virtual machine. Click on finish when you're done. And there it is. You can actually right click now on it. Let's right click. And we're not going to start. We are going to go to settings of the virtual machine. Okay. Let's take, excuse me, let's take these one by one. If you go to the BIOS, you can actually go in here and check the boot sequence. This is the boot sequence. You can change it if you want to. You move it up and down. This is similar to the computer. Regular computer, you want it to boot up from the CD first, if there's something in the CD and so on. Look at the memory. If you enabled that, we enabled that already. We're starting at a 512. It can go up to this much RAM. Okay, you can decrease that. So you can set the maximum RAM if you wanted to. The buffer memory is about 20%. That's okay. Eh, I'm going to leave. You can increase the startup memory if you want. If you feel that your computer is sluggish, you can decrease the maximum memory, for example. Processor, there's only one processor running. So you can actually, if you have your machine has multiple processors and threadings, you can increase that. So, and typically the host machine should have multiple processors, even with the Viper threadings that doubles up the amount of processing. Very large hard space, hard drive space, and lots of memory. And then you could put all your virtual machine servers right on that one machine, as long as it's sturdy and it can um, so it's gonna the host machine, it will be expensive, and that will save you a lot of money on buying many multiple hardware and processors. Okay, here's your hard drive. So click on the hard drive. So on the hard drive itself, you know, here is the visual hard disks that you have and the IDE controller. If you click on edit and on the hard drive, click on next. Now you can compact, convert, or expand the hard drive. So let's click on convert. You go to next. Now, do you want to convert it from VH to VHDX? I'll leave it at VHDX because that's the latest and the greatest, and it can handle up to 64 terabyte of hard drive. I'm going to click on next. Do you want it fixed or dynamic? Remember, we talked about that in a previous lesson. So we'll leave it on dynamic so you can actually pull your drive and move it around. Remember, dynamic drives has the boot and all the disk information placed on the disk itself. So we'll do that. And then we are going to configure the disk. Excuse me. What this is where do you want it stored? All right. So I want you to take a snapshot of this that you know how to edit the hard drive and how to deal with it. So okay. So when you're done, remember this is what's coming next is summary. So I'm just going to get out of this because I'm leaving everything else the same. If you go to inspect, click on inspect on the hard drive, here it's telling you that the current size of memory is 4 megs. The maximum is 127 gig. That's all it's being using for memory. All right. So take a snapshot of this as well, because you probably want to see this and see how much your virtual machine is using memory, how much hard drive space that's being allocated to this machine, right? That's the file size that's been running on it. That's how much that this actually, that's not the memory, it's just the file size. I think I said memory, the file size that's being used. Okay, and this is how much space you can give it. The more stuff you add into this virtual machine, it will come up. So your actual virtual machine, everything is really one big file called test VM. Okay, close this. You can go to well, this is great. I don't have a physical drive. If the physical drive you want is not listed, make sure that the disk is offline. So if it's offline, we don't have one, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's go to DVD. This is where you actually place your you boot up from. You go to the image file, you browse for it, you put it in here, and once you're done with that, you can go ahead and right click and start. So you can actually do that to install your operating system, to install the operating system on the VM. So let's just go back to settings. Okay, so from the DVD is where you actually install it. You can get it from, if you have the DVD itself and it's in D drive, you just click right here, you don't need the ISO, right? And you can install directly from there. All right, I don't know if you have a SCSI controller. Most likely you probably don't. Here's the COM port for the mouse and the diskette drives, which we really don't do. The other thing I want to look at down here, the integration services. Let's take a look at that. These are already been installed for you, which are really very nice features that you have. You will get the operating system, which invites, you know, um, invites shutdowns with time synchronization with the VM. So this will allow the virtual machine to synchronize its time with the host itself. That's the time synchronization. And the operating system shutdowns is what happens when the operating shuts down either the host or the machine, abruptly shuts down. What are you going to do? Data exchange, oops, I unchecked it. It allows you to exchange data between the host and the virtual machine. Heartbeat is if your virtual machine is unresponsive. For example, something went wrong. This is really what's nice, is you can take a snapshot like restore point and it saves it for you. And you can always, if something went wrong, you can always get that snapshot back so you don't lose any of the data. And for backup, or actually backup is the one that creates the snapshots. And the heartbeat is if your machine is unresponsive, what do you do? Okay, so the backup version is the one that allows you to do the snapshots. I'm getting ahead of myself. These are already installed for you. And if you have an older server, you probably need to do these. The older the server, the more important these become. Okay. Checkpoint file locate. Well, actually, click back in here. I want to make sure that you heard and understood what these feature integrated services are. So take a snapshot of that. Let's move on. Okay, this is the check file. This is where your Hyper-V is located. The smart paging file location. It's located in there. The automatic start action. This is what to do when the VMware physical computer starts. What do you want it to do when it starts? Let's say it crashes. And what do? You do nothing or automatically start. If it was running before, just start it up again. You can say don't do anything or start with the virtual machine automatically. So just leave it at automatically start. If it was running and let's say something happened, blackout happened, and when you open up the virtual machine, you want your operating system to be up and running. Automatic stop, what happened if the host virtual machine, when the host crashes? What do? You want to save the machine state. Okay, just leave that up there. So late you save it. That's when you're doing a proper shutdown. Not, if you just turn off the machine, you just physically click the power button. But when you do a proper shutdown is what you really want to do. So you're asking it to save the virtual machine and do a proper shutdown. All right, take another snapshot of this. Okay, that's pretty much it. Oh, let's one more thing. Let's go to Hyper-V settings, the actual hypervisor. Okay, so here's your virtual machines, how many GPUs that you have. Um, so you may have multiple in here if you want for remote access. You can enable remote access. Uh, you could do live migration, stored migrations, enhanced mode policy. We don't see that. We don't have anyone installed. Um, you can configure Hyper-V to allow enhanced session mode connection to virtual machines running the server and replication. You can enable computer replicating server, so you can replicate the whole server using Kerberos, using certificate base if you want to. Here's the keyboard using the virtual machine. So really, we don't do it. You don't. We don't. I just want you to see this, but there is really not many changes that you have to do here. Take a snapshot of the Hyper-V settings in case you ever need it. Well, not in case you ever need it, because you need to submit it for the lab. Okay, and let's hit cancel. In here, you'll have your checkpoint. This is where you can do your snapshots. You can remove a server. Um, and that's pretty much it, really. You can leave it in there. And once you're done, let's go to Server Core. That's it for Hyper-V. You can install a virtual machine. And if you go to settings, just a quick review, go to the DVD-ROM. You don't have to change. Of course, you have to set up the memory and all that stuff. Click on the image file, depending on where you saved it. Once you're done, you can get out of this. You can right click and actually enable it right here too. Well, actually not from here. And then right here, you can right click and you can click start, or you can highlight it, click on go. You can go to file or the action if you want. There's somewhere in here, I think. Okay, there you go, action start. And then it will boot up and you install your machine and you'll be good to go. You can do many of these right in here. All right, now let's talk about Server Core. Server Core is going back in here. Let's go back to our notes. When we talk about Server Core, is you can actually go like you can download. In the old days you can download Server Core and on your machine. This is for the engineers that like to work with don't like to work with the GUI. They like to remember command. You have more control, and it uses a lot less resources, and memory than a GUI version of the operating system. So if you're really good with the commands, you can install many server cores that will eat up a very few amount of resources from your virtual machine, and you can access them remotely, and they are more secured. All right, but the GUI is more flexible, easier to use, of course, and that's what we've been doing. All right, so if you want to switch, oh, one more thing, forgot. I'm sorry, I apologize. We forgot about. Let me go to. Let me go. We forgot about how to set up a server connection, internet connection. So let's go to Tools. Go to back to Hyper-V, and if you right-click in here, go back to Settings. We want to set up the network adapter, right? So you click on the network adapter. I want to talk about how to set it up for internet before we go back to the server core. And you would have three choices. You'll have in external. So if you choose external, you got to do it on the actual server itself. You got to do external, which means your virtual machine connects to the outside world via either the internet or another network. You can choose private. Private means you can talk with other networks, other virtual machines, but not the host. And you can choose internal network. That means your virtual machine talks to other guys in addition to the host itself. So that's what really how you set that up. All right, take a snap picture of this. That will be your last snap picture for the Hyper-V, right? So let me see. You can right click on there. Um, you can create a virtual switch if you want, which is really the virtual switch manager. This is creating more. Here are the external, internal. When you right click the virtual switch, which is the LANs in external, internal, and the private, right? Creating a switch is really like creating a virtual VLAN, like what's what a LAN is. All right, let's go back to the server core and back to our notes. So, like I said, the server core uses a lot less resources than the GUI version. Okay, now the problem in the old days, we used to have to go to server core, you have to really, once you go to server core, it made it very difficult to come back into the GUI version. So you could actually install both separately if you want. But the good thing with 2012 is they allow us to go to server core version, no GUI. They take all of the features of the GUI features out. And if you want to come back, they can bring them back to you by typing a few commands. So I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to show you what are the commands. Here are the two commands that you need. Uh, well, to remove them first. This is to come back, to switch back to GUI. So here's what you do to go to server core. You have to remove the role. So you go to manage, remove roles and features, click on next. And it's not a role, it's a feature that you want to remove. So just click on next again. And when you go down here, you want to remove the user interfaces and infrastructure. So just click on that. It's going to, you want to remove all of these features and you just click on it. Oops. And see it's unchecked. And now if you click next, it will do a confirmation and it will remove the GUI. Once you're done, I'm just going to, please take a snapshot of this. This is what I want you to bring up on how to go to server core. To be able to come back, all you have to do is type these two commands in on the prompt. You type in PowerShell. It will take you to the PowerShell. And then in PowerShell, you type this one command. You just remember, add Windows feature, put a space, name, space, PowerShell, space. Here, this is all one command, comma. And then just keep typing this command all the way down, and then space dash computer and your server name, and then dash restart. You don't have to go to core and come back. Okay, just that one snapshot for server core on how to get there. And if you get there, you need to know all the commands on how to add and users and manage users using the command line. All right, that ends this lesson. So until I see you next, keep up the good work.